Hey, this is Jeremy Vanderloop with CRES Community. Thank you so much for tuning in to this CRES Chat. We're very excited about the content that's coming out of some of our guests. Please subscribe and also check the schedule. Come in person and be a part of this conversation. I'm real excited about this episode with my friend Alex MacKinnon. Alex has a phenomenal story. He's gone from riches to rags to riches again, and just an amazing human being who just sacrifices and is so selfless. He has 7 children. And they also have 2 or 3 foster children at the time of this episode. And he is just an amazing human being who has some phenomenal advice on how to parent in the 21st century. Welcome to our CRES Chat, guys. My name is Jeremy Vanderloop. This is my friend Alex MacKinnon. Is that how you say your last name?
That's right. Yep.
Okay. I always mess up last names, so it's kind of the ongoing joke. Is this correct? I've said it like 16 times in my life. But so we're on finishing up a series on relationships, balance, and priorities. Now this is really kind of doubling down on our relationships with our children in today's world. And parenting is really hard. Would you agree or disagree with that statement?
I would, absolutely agree. It's not for wimps. No.
Yeah, parenting is hard. Do you guys think that's true? Parenting is hard, or is it's just an easy thing? That's the joy of these chats. This is really a conversation, and so I just wanted to say thanks to Alex for coming. Alex, give us a background. Who are you? What do you do? What's your past? What's your present? What's your future? What you got going on?
Those are big questions, right? My name is Alex. I'm 59. I'm married to a wonderful woman. Her name is Melissa. We've been married for 21 years. We have 7 children. And then we have 2 foster children currently, 2 and 3-year-olds. They're brother and sister, 9 months apart. So we've got old ones that wear us out emotionally.
Yeah.
And we have young ones that wear us out physically.
And what's the age? What's your oldest?
Oldest is 33.
Okay.
And the youngest is 12. So 20 years of kids. 4 of them are still in the house, 12, 14, 16, 18.
Yeah.
And then 2 foster children, 2 and 3.
And so you have a 2-year-old and a 3-year-old at home as well.
Yeah, just 6 kids in our house currently.
Only 6.
Yeah.
So I think he knows a little thing about parenting. What do you guys think, right? So what's your professional background?
For years, we had a family business in Tampa. We owned equipment dealerships in Florida and Georgia. 5 years ago, we sold our business. My father and I were partners in that. And then I became a business coach. So today I coach small to medium-sized businesses, help them build great businesses for a greater purpose. That's what I do. That's
awesome. Now, your story is phenomenal, and because there's a little bit of unpacking, and you can unpack at whatever level you want to unpack it in, but I think your story is one of the most inspiring stories I've ever heard. So these 7 children, you have parented in every decade, but you've also parented in almost every aspect, from single parenting to blended parenting to, home, and now parenting someone else's children.
Yeah, I never thought about it like that. Yeah, I'm not well, right?
Yeah,
yeah, it's true.
Yeah.
Yeah, so my story, grew up a upper middle income family. My father worked for a big corporation. My parents, great parents, at, every opportunity and blessing that a kid could have, right?
Yeah.
We moved here. My mother and father, my father's dream always was to own his own business. So when I was a junior in high school, my father said, "Hey, we've got this opportunity to buy this business in Tampa." And we were living in Pennsylvania, and there was like 2 feet of snow. And I thought about girls and beaches, and I said, well, let's go, right? So we moved to Florida, and my parents bought this business. So we kind of went along, and the business grew, was successful. I got married right out of college, went to work on Wall Street for a few years, and then came back to work in the family business. And when I was about 32, I had 3 children with my first wife. And I was probably 32, and she said, "Hey, this isn't working for me. I want a divorce." And I said, no, we're going to go to counseling. I don't want a divorce, so we're not going to get one, right? Well, I didn't know about no-fault divorce, and nobody in my family had ever been divorced. And she said, "No, it's over. pack up your stuff and move out. And I was like, wow. And so that's what happened. We got divorced. And my mother, who was my best friend, at the same time, she was 57 and she was dying from cancer. And I was working in the family business, and I was sleeping on a friend's couch. I was heartbroken about being divorced, and my mother, who was my best friend, was dying. And my father and I, we got in a disagreement at work. He said that he fired me, but I remember quitting. But needless to say, I wasn't working there anymore. So I was in a lot of pain, and I felt like the divorce was kind of public. Well, nobody cared, but for me, I thought everybody was looking at us. And so I decided that I was going to move to Atlanta, Georgia. So I went to Atlanta, Georgia. And in Atlanta, Georgia, I fell off the edge, right? The bars were open till 4 o'clock in the morning, and nobody knew my name. And it wasn't very long before I became a homeless drug addict and alcoholic. And I lived on the streets in Atlanta, right? I was a homeless guy living on the streets. And so on September 27th, 1999, I cried out. I said, God, if you exist, I wasn't any kind of follower, right, or God or believer in God, but if you exist, you either need to kill me or deliver me. But I can't do this anymore, right?
Yeah.
It was like I was at the end of myself. Winter was coming. You think Atlanta's in the South, but Atlanta can be cold in the winter, and I'm like, I can't do this anymore. So that day, a man appeared, and he said, look, if you want to get better, I can help you. And I can show you the path. And I'm like, okay. I was certainly on a big losing streak. And so I was 35 years old, right? Homeless, drug addict, and alcoholic. And this man showed me the way. And so that was, many years ago, right? So, and my life from ashes, really became a thing of beauty, really, from that kind of where I was 35 years old. So,
yeah, and then. To continue with that. So it's an amazing story because you think you have this perfect life, right? From the outside looking in, you were, just this perfect life. Wall Street, married to 3 kids, family business, status, everything that you need. The world implodes, right? And then you're homeless, drug addict on the streets of Atlanta, right? And then there's this pivot in your life. You still have 3 kids. So you're still a parent, but now you've been an absentee father. For this time, right? Your kids aren't in your life. Subsequently, there's just no connection point there with your children. So you come back down to Florida as you've kind of coming up out of the dust, and then you're living by yourself. You pick yourself up. You're in your apartment, and then what happens? You're living on your own. Yeah,
my life kind of became like playing country music backwards, right? So all the things I lost kind of came back, right? So one night I'm sitting there. I came back to Tampa. I wanted to be near my kids, and I'm working in the family business. My father doesn't trust me, rightly so. Gives me this small role in the business, and there's this knock on my door, and it's my ex-wife. And she says, hey, look, I've done all I can do. You need to take the kids. And I'm like, what do you mean? She goes, yeah, I'm leaving.
To overnight. You have 3 kids now.
Yeah, living
Single
in a
dad.
one bedroom apartment, bunk beds, and it was kind of crazy, right? And I thought I was doing really well, and which was not the case. But I had to improvise pretty quickly. So
so that was your first 3 kids, your experience with them, and now you're a single dad. And then on the scene comes your wife of 21 years now.
Yep.
And because I think the backstory of like why there's a validity of like the conversation we're having with these questions, your experience I think can help so many of us that have children, because you've been wildly successful and you sandwiched it with a lot of suffering in between, right? On both sides, you started out successful, with Wall Street and all this other stuff. You lost it, you lost everything, and then now you've seen your life get restored, and now you're again supporting now children that are fatherless and from.
Yeah, my life is peaks and valleys. I have no consistent little like this.
Yeah.
I have highs, big highs, and really
That's
really
all
deep
of
lows.
us. Yeah.
I met my Melissa, who I'm married to now. My parents had my dad and his new wife, after my mom died, they kept the kids for me, and so I had like a weekend alone, and so I go to Starbucks and I see Sunday morning, and there's this beautiful young woman in a black dress, and everybody else at the Starbucks looks like they'd crawled out from under a rock, right? They're like,
Yeah, they're at Starbucks. You're getting
yeah,
coffee.
they'd maybe been out late the night before, but she hadn't. And I thought, wow, that's a beautiful sight. She's either going to church or coming from church, but what a beautiful, almost like a sunset, right, kind of a thing. And I didn't speak to her, but I leave, and then I go to church, and then about 5 minutes later, she comes in and sits right in front of me,
Yeah.
right? And I'd never seen her before. And so, I think God did for me what I could not do for myself, right? He brings her to me, and we start this conversation afterwards, and we know, our families know each other and some different things. And, it's one of those awkward things. I was kind of socially retarded. And so I look around, and there's nobody at the church. Everybody's gone. It's just her and I, right, after church. And then I kind of panicked, and I said, well, listen, it was good to meet you. And I just walk away, right? She's like, what the heck is going on? What a weirdo that guy was. And then the very next Sunday, I went back to that same Starbucks.
Yeah.
And I camped out, and I was hoping she would show up, and people said, hey, can I sit in the seat? I'm like, no, I'm waiting for somebody. And then eventually she showed up, right? And she was truly a godsend for me, because I thought I was doing really great with my 3 kids. And she's 10 years younger than me, never been married. And I said, yeah, there's something I got to tell you. She's like, well, what? I said, well, I've got 3 kids. Oh, interesting. And where are they? Well, they live with me in my 1-bedroom apartment.
Yeah.
And she's like, what? So she came over and looked, and I was proud of what I was doing. And she was like, I don't know where our relationship's going to go. Maybe nowhere, probably nowhere. But you need some help with these kids, because you're a train wreck. You're an absolute train wreck. And so,
So now, 4 kids later, right?
Yeah, so we have 4 children together.
Yeah.
12, 14, 16, and 18.
Yeah, that's amazing. And so, and then the foster care. You guys have just gotten into the foster care, right? Because you're in. So your first 3 children, they've grown up, and they're doing some pretty amazing things. I know you've talked about them and how proud you are of them. And your 4. I mean, I met your middle son.
Yeah, he's my number, the one in the middle of the 7.
Yeah,
his name is Hartwell. He just graduated from high school.
Great kid, right? Amazing kid. And so, what do you think with your experience? And we've never started a CRES Chat this way, with just this long of an intro and a story, but it was a phenomenal story, and I just thought it would just give really good context that life doesn't always look like cupcakes and rainbows. You know what I mean? When you start digging into it, and parenting is really hard, but you're never not a parent. And so you had the opportunity to become a single father overnight, and you begin to work through that and learn through that. And then you had 4 more children, raise them up as technology was changing and culture was changing. And now you're taking care of children that aren't even your own. You're being a father to 2 more little children that you have no biological connection to. And so I would just want to commend you for that. You can tell there's just an amazing heart that you have for children and for parenting. And I have 4 children. My oldest is 10, 6, 4, and 2. And so I thought I knew a thing or two, and then I heard your story. I don't know nothing about parenting. We've parented in every decade now, and you go, good night, alive. I need to talk to Alex.
Makes me feel
about
really
this.
old when you say it that way.
You stay young. But so I've got the questions here. What do you think the greatest impact in our kids' life? It's the greatest impact in our kids' lives, and when do you think the most impactful time in a human's life is?
So I think it is always, right? So it's this thing, right? So I'm this guy who really got off track, right? And at 35 years old, right, was able to radically change my life, right? So I think that, when they're born is really important. When they're babies, the care that you give for them, the love, the support, the holding, the smiles, the communication, the reading to them when they're toddlers, the elementary school times, the horrible middle school times, the high school times, and even as adults, right? It's this process. Well, I think it is all important.
It's all important. Absolutely, 100%
Yeah.
agree. If you could delineate this play of highest, because I remember when we were first married, me and Brittany, she wanted to talk about having kids, and I can sometimes be smart, and I felt like I had a smart moment, and was like, hey, when we have these children, we will always have them. They will be always in our mind. We'll always have conversations about them. I don't want to talk about them right now because I'm only married to you like this. And I was right. We were literally married for 2 years and then had a kid. And so it was like now, for the last 10 years, we've only been talking about our kids and what we can do. You know, so every conversation, there's somehow, some way, a child is brought up in the conversation. It's not the focal point of the conversation. But so I will always be a dad. Period. You will always be a dad. We'll always be parents. And so we will always have a point of influence and impact in another human soul or another human being's life. Do you think, out of your experience, do you see, is there, in that timeline of impact, is there a position when there's a higher impact on a human's life?
Yeah, I think I see it. So we have a 2-year-old and a 3-year-old,
Yeah.
right, that are in our care. They've been with us for 15 months, right?
Mm-hmm.
So they've been with us for a fair amount of time. I see some things that these kids are missing, right? They're just missing because of the environment that they've come from, right? Parents that were, abuse and drug addiction in their home, right? That's kind of what they were born into. And they're missing some things, I think, that they just missed, right? Things like, a secure and a safe environment, right? Physical touch.
Yeah.
Reading stories to them. Like when they never had stories read to them. Like never, right? I mean, when they came to us, right? So I think it's, the early years are really critical, right? And if you miss things there, not to say that, that can't be, you can't thrive and flourish if you miss things when you were smaller. I just think it's more difficult.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I mean, I remember I was talking to a professor who studied on family and the dynamics, and he had mentioned something that stuck with me. He said most people are parenting like a pyramid. They parent, take this triangle, and they give a lot of freedom, a lot of just give and take when they're really little and they don't think about the impact that you're having at those age points between 0 and 3, then 4 and 7, right? And so you're allowing them to get away with so much stuff and do these different things. And he said, and then most people, when they hit 13, all of the information that these children have been taking from you, because they're sponges and they're a mirror. Like my kids last night were repeating. They play a game with daddy, and they repeat everything I say the way I say it. And sometimes that's a good thing. Sometimes it's really not a good thing because I really messed up. And I think one of the biggest things that we were kind of laughing about is like the number one thing that we always have to worry about as parents is how do we not screw up our kids? That's like my greatest fear, is doing something that's going to just jack my kids up, and it's going to be all my fault. And I can't be the only parent that feels that way, right? I mean, it's so, but like this idea was that when these kids hit 13, most parents go, oh no, and they go, and they create this major restriction point, and then it creates this level of like rebellion and all this stuff. And then he said, this guy's advice was you should learn to parent like an upside down triangle, where you give a lot of structure and order in the beginning, and as they get older, you begin to open up the ability of critical thought and allow them to make, because you're training them and to make these decisions. So I've always kind of taken that approach. Like I've only got 13 years of where I'm actually like the quarterback in my kid's life. I got 13 years where I'm actually calling the shots, throwing the ball, and they are the receiver of life. But then after that, it starts to pivot where I have to now retire from the game and become a coach, and they're now the quarterback at 13. And it's like pretty much after that point, this is my thought, and that's why I want to have the conversation on it. After 13, it's pretty much you're either applying what you were taught or rewiring the negative of what you learned. And that's like what we do through our entire life, is trying to rewire the impact, do good, bad, or indifferent, or apply the wiring that we were taught between 0 and 13. Do you see any truth in that with having children at every age gap now?
Yeah, I think definitely true, right? More structure, more directives when they're littler, and as they get older, you're trying to, what's the end objective? What are you trying to achieve, right? So what I want is I want happy, productive adults, right? So what does that look like, right? So, and I think that you need to give them more and more authority over their self-government as they get older. Yeah, for sure.
Yeah, and so it's because I see that all the time. I see my friends that have teenagers, right, and they start freaking out because now their teenagers are making decisions. And now, like, I remember when I was eating lunch with a buddy of mine, and his 16-year-old lied to him, and he was like, he was completely flabbergasted that this person just lied to him. Why? And he was just so heartbroken. And I was sitting there, I was like, I know I got little kids, I said, but when I was 13 to 16, I lied to my parents all the time about stuff. They thought I was doing things. I was making my own decisions, and I had a roadmap, but I was the one. You don't have any control over your son now, dude. Like, those days are over. He's on the field. He's the one making the shots, and you're just coaching him. And so it was like this thing, and he almost hit me. No, he didn't. But the idea was like sometimes we don't realize and don't value the time we have when they're little. Because and that was the other thing this guy said is like when you're parenting a 4-year-old, you need to remember you're parenting a 16-year-old and a 26-year-old. But the reality is that if you want to battle this out young, so that because the consequences are less when they're 6, they're crying over a toy. Verse 16, they're having an unwanted pregnancy or an unplanned pregnancy. Or 26, they're creating destruction in their life. And they're learning that lesson at 26 when you're not around. And that was his whole philosophy that we're trying to apply, but it's very hard. Parenting is hard to apply these things and truths. But what is there any nuggets to that? Any philosophy or principle that you've seen? How do you handle when your kids are little and then when they get older? How do you handle that where you just have really no full control over them? You can coach, but it's not like you're with them all the time, right? In the car.
I think it's a transition, right? From when they're little, it's control. Yeah. Right. When they're 3 years old, you tell them what to do and they need to do it, right? Yeah. When they get older, right? What I hope for is to continue to have influence with them, right? That's for me, from control to influence, and every child is different, right? Like my 18-year-old, I could still control him today and he would do it. But my 16-year-old, if I told him what to do, he would rebel, right? So they're all kind of different, right? So same parents, grew up in the same home, same upbringing, everything kind of identical, and they're very different, right? So I think, and what I hope with all of my kids, right, is that we transition, and they're all kind of different, right? And that we transition, that hopefully that we have a relationship, because if you have no relationship, you have no chance of influence.
That's true.
Right? So for me, it's about continue to be in relationship with them, and then hopefully being able to be in a place where I can have influence on my 33-year-old daughter, my 30-year-old son, my 29-year-old daughter, right? So it's hopefully but if I'm not in relationship with them, I've got no chance for influence.
Yeah, and that's where when you try to control after a certain point in a human's life, that's where it becomes to fracture, and now other resources are influencing them.
Yeah.
Right? And our daughters, right, are being influenced by. And that's why it's so important to invest in your daughters young. Like I do a daddy-daughter trip and a daddy-son trip, end up my one-on-one. I've done that for years. And it's when I learned so much about my children because they're all different.
Yeah. It's about investing in the relationship, right?
Yeah.
So it's part of, I just got back from 8 days in Paris, in France, with my 18-year-old son, because he's graduated from high school. He's at that weird spot. He's kind of untethered, right? He's not in high school anymore, and he hasn't started his next chapter in his life. And so it's this time where I feel like we can really create memories that he'll carry with him forever, but it's an opportunity to really invest in our relationship. And I said, well, where do you want to go? And he said, man, he's a history guy. He's into political science. He said, I would love to go to Normandy. And I said, all right, well, let's do it. So that's what we did. For 8 days, we were together in France. And to create these memories and this relationship and this bond, we had some interesting experiences on it, right? It was kind of funny, but but things that he'll carry with him forever, right?
Yeah.
So,
like your card's not working. You're not knowing.
Yeah. We ran out of gas in a like really remote part of France, and and I don't speak any French. He doesn't speak any French, and the people where we're at don't speak any English, like zero.
And you couldn't get any gas.
No. And he's melting down because we're gonna have to spend the night in some.
But he'll remember that till he's gray and old.
Hopefully
right?
so.
He will. I would remember that, and how my dad responded to it.
Yeah, not the best.
It's you guys doing good? It's a good chat, good conversation, right? We have a couple more questions too to talk through, but there's this play in life that I'm forgetting now. It was a really good thought, and I completely just spaced with my ADD. So it might come back. I might circle back.
Blurt it out. Blurt it out.
Blurt
if
it
it
out
comes
when
to
it
you.
comes. That's why I have an outline of questions, or else we would ADD constantly and just squirrel things through. So what I have right now, how in business in life as entrepreneurs, and this is a whole nother thing that we can talk about if you're not doing this, but coaching, anything measured grows and gets better, right? So you agree with that statement?
Yeah, I'd say what gets measured improves.
Yeah, right. Like it's a principle, and so the idea is that we're constantly measuring our impact and the response of the market and these different things within our companies and in our life, and it's the 1 degree rule. Right? I went to a Vern Harnish thing last fall, and the first female fighter pilot was one of my favorite speakers at this like drinking from a fire hydrant conference type thing. Like there's no way you can take it all in, so you're just trying to get nuggets. And so she had this thing she's called it the 1 degree rule. If you're going 600 miles an hour, right, in a fighter jet, and you're 1 degree off course, in 1 hour you're 60 miles off target, and now you're of no support to the men on the ground. And so she was saying what you do is you frequently adjust the 1 degree daily and weekly and monthly, and you're trying to find, the faster you can find the conflict, the faster you can find the error, right, the greatest impact you can make. And that's so we say the cheapest time of conflict is the moment we discover it in ourselves and in our companies. And that's a core principle of my company. And so taking that principle and now applying it into this form of life called parenting, is there a way, or how have you guys, in that we can measure and track and be more intentional? It's about intentionality is this question, about course correcting in our parenting. Because if we are the ones right now, how many of you guys have children under the age of 13? So half the room. How many of you guys have children over the age of 13? Right? And so this question is really kind of in twofold, right? So because there's still influence versus control, the principle still stands, but the application is going to be different, right? So if I need to try to course correct as an influence versus control, so is there any way that we can measure and honestly, it's taking responsibility for ourselves as parents first, right? Do you have anything? Is there any metrics? Like what can you measure? Are there KPIs to this? Are there, it comes down to like how bad we're sucking, right? And be like, because you're not measuring your kid, you're measuring yourself, is what I would assume in this question.
Yeah, it's like, can we make a science out of parenting? I don't know.
It's not that. It's about self-evaluating how you just did something that if you're not conscious of that thing,
Sure. I think for me, right.
You can't science parent thing. No.
So it's this thing about, you're too young to even know who this person is, but Stephen Covey wrote this book called The 7 Habits of Highly Effective People, probably long before you were born. I'm sure you've heard
still doesn't exist.
Yeah, but he talked about this beginning with the end in mind, right? And I think is a parent, right? What's the outcome that we want, right? And so when you think about that, right, you say, okay, well, what are some frameworks that maybe we could put in place? Like, so we try on Sundays, we have this day with our family where we all the electronics go off. We go to church, and we just spend time together as a family.
So for the entire Sunday, there's no electronics.
No electronics for the parents either, right?
Wow.
So parents and the
I'm gonna write
kids.
that down.
And so we just it's become, now our kids complain about it, and it's funny when the sun goes down on Sunday, they scramble to their rooms to get to their electronics, right? But it's really a sweet thing, you know. We spend time together as a family.
Yeah.
We reconnect. We play games, cards. We just connect, right? So it's kind of a structural thing that we do, right? So that's a thing, but that's really about making sure we stay connected as a family, right? That's why we do it, right?
Yeah.
So we have some structural things that we do. You know, I try to spend time with each kid every week, right? And that might be just taking them to school, right?
It's a one-on-one every week.
Yeah, and it might be go for a walk around the neighborhood. It might be, and I don't have a spreadsheet. I don't have a to-do, and I don't tick the box like that's not how it is, right? But I'm just
priority, though. It's a priority system you've put in your life. You're not numbering them, but you are structuring your life to make them a priority.
Yeah, and all the kids we've told them all, like, when you're 18, right? When you finish high school, you pick a parent, and you decide where you want to go anywhere in the world, and we'll take you. Right?
Have they ever picked a parent that you were like, dang it, man?
No,
I thought I was your favorite. Now you're
so far, I'm 4 for 4, right? So, but I know.
Questions for your wife then.
Yeah. I know that my time is up. I probably will have to stay home and man the fort. Now that we have 2 foster children, I'm sure that the 16-year-old will probably pick his mother.
Yeah.
So I'll have to stay home and.
Yeah. Oh, it's so true though. That is such a good intentionality. So it's because we're all about rhythms and habit stacking, your morning routines, your processes, and the principle that I always talk on a lot is there's 2 things in life that'll name themselves, and the others will name for you. It's your time and it's your money. And corporations are spending billions and gazillions of dollars every year to name your time and money, to buy your time and your money. Right? AI knows what you want before you do, and they can influence your thought to buy. And so it's more than ever us having control and self-control and self-discipline to say no to this. And this, I find when I get really anxious and stressed, lately I've been on this a lot more, to where my wife even noticed. She's like, you're on your phone more than you ever usually are. What's going on? And because it's designed to create some level of control of my dopamine, to where when I feel like there's things that I'm losing control of, right, that I scroll. And so knowing that you have to course correct, because my kids are catching that, right, in me. And so nobody in the history of the planet has ever had to parent in the climate that we're having to parent in right now. Nor have they had to live a healthy life and a prioritized life in their life and business when people have access to you 24/7 through this. All over the world, right? And so that's the threat that our kids are walking into. But the question I have for you is, what do you think the greatest threat is for our children's generation?
There's so much pressure, right? So you see it, like, if you want to go to college, right, you have to have like above a 5.0 GPA, right? I mean, so there's a lot of pressure. There's a lot of stress on these kids. You see them in high school, like it's really stressful. But I think the biggest challenge, right, I think that technology and social media in the future will probably be viewed like tobacco is viewed today, right? That it had a huge detrimental effect to the health and welfare of many people. Right, and so I think that protecting our children from that is probably the greatest challenge. I think it's probably the greatest risk.
I agree.
Yeah, when I was a kid growing up, we had one phone in our house, right, and my sisters and I would fight over it, and we had a long extension cord, like a cord on it, really long, and you'd go from the kitchen into the formal dining room to have privacy. Yeah. Well, now our kids can sit in their rooms with their tablets or with their phones, and anybody can have access to them, and you don't really even know what's going on.
I'm 35, right? Grew up in the 90s and early 2000s. That was my childhood.
What's that?
What you just described, right? Or maybe we had the wireless phone, but it wasn't this.
Yeah,
Right. I remember the tethered phone too when I was real little, and then they came up with the wireless one. You know?
When you're old like me, you remember the party line where the whole neighborhood shared
Yeah.
the phone.
Yeah. Right. So you can't. I don't think that's true,
No,
but
it's not true.
But the idea is, the reason why I said that is there's a gap between our ages, but we have more in common. Everyone in this room has more in common with that upbringing. Our children will never experience that, right? Because technology moved at such a rapid pace over the last 20 years that the world is different. It just is. It's completely different, and you hit it right. So my daughter will be 10 in September, double digits. It's a big year, right? 10. She knows it too. She's a sweet, amazing. My wife's killed it with her. I'll just say that. I have to give it to her. Give credit to my wife. My daughter is an amazing human being, and she is cognizant. She's aware. Her EQ, her emotional intelligence to another level. She's an awesome human being, and actually, I really enjoy spending time with her. Even if she wasn't my kid, I enjoy. That's how cool she is, right? It's a great kid. And we try not to put that pressure on her because she puts the pressure on herself, right, in that way, because she's already seeing this at 9. And the influence that she's seen from her friends, right, or the parents aren't as intentional as us. That's the great threat that we're seeing, is we can do all sorts of stuff at home, but dang, man, like being cognizant of who our kids are friends with is a big thing now, too, that we have to think about. Because this is a big threat that's hitting, and if parents aren't thinking about the detriment of this, because when they're 12, 13, 14, like, would you let some 40-year-old guy be alone with your daughter in her bedroom with the door shut? Would you? Anybody out here?
No.
You're a 14-year-old girl. You let a 40-year-old guy in there. Never met him. Would you do it? Anytime you let your child go in to their bedroom and shut the door with a phone, you are allowing a 40-year-old man to be there with your teenage daughter. We think of that regularly in our home. Yeah. But it's so hard to, and so we're kind of rambling on this technology thing. Like, one thing I did that I wish that I would have never, Amazon can get you, right? They know that those fire sales that they do, they got me, man. I'm just waiting for my TV to break. It did break once, and I was real happy because then we were back at, but when we just finished building our house that we're in right now a year ago, we moved into it, and I made a decision that I wasn't going to put a TV in the home. So I didn't do it. And so in my living room, when you come over to my house, you'll see a painting there. And we have couches, and we have conversations in the living room. And we actually talk, and we play games. And that was awesome because the kids had to detox for the first week of moving into the house because they didn't know what to do. But, you know, as soon as we, because then they're smart, too. These kids are. They found a computer, and they started watching TV on the computer. And so I had to make it uncomfortable. I moved the computer where they couldn't sit on a chair, and then they stopped. But the coolest thing happened to these kids once I set that structure up for them. And then I need to just take the TV out of the room because now we have a TV in the playroom. It's a small little thing. That's where everyone congregates now. But that first 2 months was awesome until Amazon sold me a TV for they gave me money to buy it, basically. You know, it was that cheap. And it was amazing. The first thing they did, it was summer a year ago, they ran out the door and jumped on the play set and played outside for 8 hours. It was unreal. But I had to eliminate and take control of their distraction because the TV was stealing their time and really stealing their childhood, right? And so that's kind of, but I don't know how to, I fail at this all the time. I mean, do you have any practical, is there anything, when we fall off the horse, how do we get back on? How do we encourage ourselves? Is there anything we can do as parents, from little kids to teenagers? The technology thing's brilliant on Sunday. How do you protect them during the week, though?
So I think that you have me here because I've made the most mistakes, right?
Yeah, of course.
I've made all the wrong decisions, right, and learned the painful lessons of those. But one of the things about technology is the ability to be able to control the technology.
How do we protect and help our children with
So my wife's got all this stuff where they're all in a family thing on the phone, and she locks them all down, right? At certain times, it turns off. And they kind of freak out. They'll come, hey, can you give me 5 more minutes? We're like, no, right? So you can use technology
that's healthy.
To limit their access, to set boundaries for them. So with us, we've either homeschooled our kids or send them mostly to private, education till they're in high school. And then in high school, we send them to a public high school because we want them, while they're living with us, we want to teach them, we want to have conversations with them about all the things that they're seeing, right? So it's this thing about giving them more freedom to self-manage their lives, and while they're under our roof, we want to have conversations with them about what worked well and what didn't work well, and then they're all different, right? Some of them are more independent than others, and so it's just so what we're trying to do is by the time they graduate, that they're kind of, we've had maybe 4 years of being able to talk to them about
that is
the world and the life.
that scares the heck out of me.
What's that?
Just doing that, right? There's that, but that is the reality that I have to hold on to as a dad. That goes, I have a limited time with my oldest, but it's limited to that I have to give them to the world, right?
Yeah.
That's probably one of the scariest things. It brings almost tears to my eyes when you think of that. You're like, and I think that as parents is where we sit, is I have to give them to the world.
Yeah, but we're not the first generation to have to do
I know,
that,
but
right?
I'm just saying it's still hard. I think it's where we make most of our mistakes, is that fear to let go.
But you don't really, right? So this is the thing. You think, I thought, right?
Yeah.
Well, when they're 18 and they're out of the house, I'm done being a parent. Well, no, that's not been my experience,
Yeah,
right?
yeah.
It's when the parenting gets harder.
Yeah,
It gets harder, right? So it's about staying in relationship, right, and having influence, and when everything falls apart for your adult child.
Yeah.
Right.
How do you know when seasons are changing? Is there a telltale sign of how the kids act, how they communicate with you?
Something happens when they turn 13. I don't know
It
what
does.
it is.
I've
Like,
heard of that. All my buddies say that.
Yeah, but I think every child is kind of different, right? And if you're in relationship with them and have conversations, I've been able to say, okay, I understand, I get it. So I don't think there's any formulas.
I know
There's no science. No, if it's more of an art.
You know me too well. Be like,
It's
hey,
more
is
of an
there-
art than a science.
Is there any way we can
formulaic.
systematize this and arbitrage this and create controls, within the complexities of this?
Yeah, automate it.
Can we automate this? Can I
No.
automate my
I
job?
think no.
Can AI help with this? Is there any type of software, machine learning?
Maybe. I don't know.
Yeah.
I'm learning about AI.
Oh my gosh! Now that's the thing that's a huge threat to our generation, and I think society is. I'm big on critical thought, real big on it, and no one ever taught me critical thought. I had to teach myself critical thought. Like that's just a reality. So, but I think for myself. I'm an entrepreneur. We create solutions for pain points, and technology. I think one of the greatest levels that we can help our children is if we can teach them critical thought, because AI is only going to make us dumber as a society. In my opinion, I think what's going to happen right now, I can go to ChatGPT and be like, "Hey, can you write this contract? We did it this week for a giant deal. So, hey, can you write this addendum in this contract for us in this way, right? And then we're going to send it to Felix soon to review. But it's the idea that ChatGPT did it in 20 seconds, right? And some of my attorney buddies look at it and they go, "Have you looked at ChatGPT, Felix, and seen the contracts they write and stuff?" Felix is a real estate attorney. They get pretty dang close to accurate. And you go, oh my goodness. Like, attorneys aren't safe anymore, right? Like, do you think machine learning and AI, and so if we can teach our kids critical thought when the majority of society is not learning critical thought, how much more leverage will they have as an adult being able to think for themselves and not have to go to a machine or AI to think for them, to perform for them? Is there any way to develop critical thought? What are your thoughts on that?
Well, I think that there's a lot of talk and a lot of buzz about artificial intelligence, about ChatGPT, and how Microsoft is pouring billions of dollars and it's going to take over the world. I think nothing is going to be able to replace relationships. Nothing's going to be able to replace creativity. And nothing's really going to be able to, I don't think, to be able to replace wisdom, right? So I think you can have all these things, but I think those three things are going to be the same. Those are the things that make us uniquely human, right? And I think that, I remember my dad saying, these personal computers, they're going to ruin our society. He's 84. The cell phones, oh my gosh, it used to be that nobody could ever get into. When I was an executive, my weekends were mine, and nobody could. This technology of this mobile phone is going to ruin the world, right?
Mm-hmm.
So I think that as technology
There's a truth to it.
changes, are we a slave to our technology, or do we use it as a tool to help us live
Mass
a
majority? We're
better
slave
life?
to it.
Well, but I'm just saying those are habits and those
Yeah.
are choices that we've made. I don't disagree.
I'm agree with that. That's why CRES exists. Is how do we get?
I don't get emails on my phone.
Yes.
I don't have a email. I can't get emails on my phone because I've deleted all the things that deliver emails to my phone.
My phone only has permission to tell me things twice a day.
Yeah, so it's part of
Right.
it's, those are the things, right?
Yeah.
So I think relationships and creativity,
Yeah.
and this idea of wisdom, those are things that we can't lose.
I think one of the greatest detriments to our children is if we put, and this is nothing new.
You sound like an old man, like a great grandfather.
All right.
Oh, the day everything's going to heck in a handbasket, and the world is a terrible place.
I know.
And my 10-year-old daughter might have to give her to the world, and oh my gosh, what am I going to do?
It's a beautiful thing, but good night alive. It's scary how fast technology is. I do sound like an 80-year-old man.
You do,
right?
jeez.
I do. I'm sorry.
Rock and
I'm
roll
sorry.
music.
I'm
4
sorry,
beats
man.
per measure is horrible.
It is what it is, I've just seen a lot in the world, and it scares the heck
It's
out
going
of
to
me.
be okay.
I know it's going to be okay. But the idea, though, is like, yes, there's beauty in this. But I've also, at the same time, like, I want to look at the brutal facts and go, all right, what are the threats to my kid? And I think one of the greatest threats to my kid is me saying, hey, do this, restrict your phone, restrict, but I don't apply those same things to me.
No, that's true. Yeah.
Right? I think
Do as I say, not as I do.
Yeah, right? And so how do we now, in this space, as adults, as parents, as entrepreneurs, as business leaders, we all live in a different world than the average person who has a W-2 for the most part. We're results-driven. If we stop moving, we will die and go bankrupt, right? If we stop producing. That's the only guarantee we have as entrepreneurs and business owners, is the primary people that are here. Not everyone here, right? Sales and so it's like, so it's detrimental that we wire ourselves with the same controls that creates more freedom of time and relationships. Because if we implement all these different things for our children, yet we don't tell our phones when to tell us things or restrict it from email. How many of you guys have email on your phone? Everyone. Right?
I don't.
You don't. You know who else doesn't? Todd Hopkins doesn't either. Very highly successful executives in the late 50s, early 60s have figured that out, but we're in our 30s.
We grew up before email.
I know, but there's something wonderful to think about, that we have the freedom to tell people no or to wait, right? I think that's one of the greatest things is like, oh, I need this right now, and not everyone's crisis is your crisis. But if they can always get to you, then you're saying yes to this quote-unquote crisis while your 6-year-old or your 16-year-old who simply wants to go on a bike ride with you or hang out with you is being told no, because now there's an email or something on social media.
But I think this idea that we're, oh my gosh, one, I think many of us are addicted to our technology.
Mm-hmm.
I also think that we have this fear that we're going to be left behind, right? That if we don't stay connected 24/7, 365 days a year, we will lose, we will be left behind. And that's a lie, but that's what we believe, right? So I think that's
Wow, that's a bombshell thing for me. I'm letting that soak in a little bit.
well, it is. So we feel like we got to stay connected all the time, and that geez, if we miss out on this deal, we won't eat and we'll lose our house, and it'll be a black and white, depression, food line,
Where my mind just went
movie.
with this is my competitor, they're always on it. So I always have to be on it. It's a lie that we could believe.
But why do people deal with you, right? People should you add value.
I said that's a lie, but you're right, though.
But how do you add value, right? I think part of this is entrepreneurs. How do you add value? Well, I add value in relationship,
Boom, 100%.
in creativity, and helping you with the wisdom that I have. That's
the value.
That's
the
value
currency.
creation.
The relationship is the currency.
Right.
And that's the principle we're trying to make contagious and sticky here at CRES. Is social capital is the most valuable capital. Right. The relationships, nothing will replace the relationship.
Well, and your creativity that you bring to the table, and the wisdom that you bring to the table through your experience, through your, the things that worked well for you, the things that didn't, right? I think that's value creation. When we talk about it, we don't really understand what that looks like.
Yeah, I mean, we're going to switch over
We're digressing
to Q&A
from
soon.
children.
But how do you think we can support one another as parents who want to, one, I guess, first thing is, does everyone in the room want to raise healthy, happy, productive human beings and adults in society? That's the first.
I'm not interested in that yet.
Yeah,
It's not the outcome I'm looking for.
That's not, so you have to align yourself with the proper outcome.
Yeah.
And if someone doesn't have that right outcome, then they're not going to have the same approach. So that would be my first thing is how do I have, it's me and Matt Tack started hanging out a lot, during COVID and became best friends. And the idea behind this, I came up with this
I thought I was your best friend.
You're my best friend now. Matt's cut to the curb. He's gone. Right?
For this talk, yeah.
For this, yeah. But the idea is seasonal synergy was something I came up with. I was like, man, this is really good. Seasonal synergy. I found somebody that was not based off of race or age or anything like that. It was based off of the season of life that we were in. Our children are the same age. And so we have this seasonal synergy. So even though I was 35 and would be with another 33-year-old had 0 kids, we had nothing in common because we had no seasonal synergy. We kind of talking about this with Dr. Carlos, right? Seasonal synergy of like this play of just, and so how can we be intentional about identifying the relationships around us with seasonal synergy? Is there anything that you think that you would suggest, or do you have any?
Well, I think community is just really, really important, right? So many of us, historically, throughout time, how did we grow up? Well, we were born and we mostly died in the same place that we were born in, right? My mother was the first person in her family to move away from Galeen, Michigan. But there were 6 generations of people before her that lived and died in that small town. So if you had a question or you needed help, you went to see your grandparents or your great-grandparents or your aunts and uncles. Today, we don't have that, right? A lot of us don't have this deep family relationships. And then even look at the way our houses are designed. There's no front porches on them, and in Florida, it's all about air conditioning.
Come to my house, right?
Well, I know there is, but I'm just saying in general, people pull into their cars, into their driveways, or into their garages, and they close the door and they go inside to their air-conditioned house, and they don't even know their neighbors. They're not in a relationship with them.
They don't know their names, they don't know nothing.
So we're very isolated and alone people. So I think in general, you have to work at being in community, right? What does that look like? And for everybody, maybe it's different, but to have relationships with people is really important. That's why I think this is so great, right? It's about community.
It's not number one thing. It's why it's in the name. CRES community, right? It's in the name.
You're a marketing genius.
Marketing genius. But what are you about? Quality community. That's it, right? And I'm constantly painting myself over how can I create these forced organic connection points. Because not everyone's going to have the same seasonal synergy. Not everyone's going to have this. Not everyone's going to like each other either. Like just like they can tolerate each other, but not everyone's going to be best friends, and that's okay as well. Yeah. So I'm constantly doing things like this, doing our CLR masterminds, our social. That's tomorrow for the entrepreneurs, and it's kind of open house. But how do we again build into this through? It's a high level of intentionality. It's something that I'm highly convicted on and pressed into, and why I've basically put my hat back in the marketplace to start another company is this is the currency that I want to focus on, because how can we talk to each other and talk about subjects like this, and parenting, because I guarantee almost all of us, if not every single one of us, have input on this, which we're going to find out, or can relate to some of the conversations we're talking about, with parenting. But it's
this guy Harvey McKay, you don't know who he is, right?
I've never heard of him.
So he was like a speaker, like a Zig Ziglar time, in the 80s and the 90s. And I remember, so this would have been in the 80s when I went to see him speak, right? And he said this thing to me that I still remember. He talked about digging your well before you're thirsty, right? So this, before you have this great need, if you haven't dug your well, you're going to have a problem, right? This idea about being in relationships with people, not if the bad times come or the challenges come, but when they come, right? It's the idea about digging your well before you're thirsty. And I think that takes intentionality. When you want to sit on your couch and, I don't know, watch television or play video games or do apps or whatever it is, right? Yeah. It takes energy, it takes investment, it takes work to build relationships. Yeah, everything's good today. I'm fine. I can do this by myself. I'm good.
My hope through just this serendipitous connection points through CRES and creating opportunities for like-minded entrepreneurs and leaders and business owners to connect was that this will be a space that you meet a friend that when you have a flat tire on the interstate, that's the first person you think of. Because that's what I realized that we've actually lost majorly. And I realized that was one of my great blessings as a parent, as a husband, as a business owner, is that I actually had that core group of relationships and that's what inspired this whole thing. Was I thought, guys, we're being selfish. We need to share this. I need to create something that will create this culture because that's what made us so successful. All of us. We kind of looked at it and said, where we started, we all grew together, and our bank accounts grew, our lives grew. We were doing life together, and that's literally how this was birthed. Was out of preparing, saying, man, I need to create something. Like I dug the well, and then the opportunity showed itself, and I had the heart for it, and then had a 30-second vision for this. But you're right. You have to look into the future with your children, with your life, with your business, with everything.
And I think divine appointments, right, are all around us every day.
Absolutely.
That I have been so distracted and so focused on Alex's agendas and all my problems and all my issues that I've had these divine appointments that I've missed. I've just missed them because I wasn't present, right? And it might be at Wawa, or it could be here today, or it might be helping somebody replace their tire, or maybe it's with my kids. I don't know, but it's like this idea that I think that's one of the dangers of this technology and this go-go world that we're in, and these beliefs that we have, is that we miss opportunities that are like all around us.
Just to be present today.
We miss them.
That's true. We do.
Yeah.
We do, and it's I think a couple more minutes of just our chat, and then we'll open up to the Q&A. But how can we structure our business? Because you're a coach, right? So we can throw. You are a brilliant business guy, by the way. If anyone wants to connect with Alex, is brilliant when it comes to business and coaching and systems and everything. But how can we wire our companies to work for us as and putting our kids and our marriages first, our relationships first? Is there any like a tweak that subconsciously, philosophically, principally, how can somebody go from here's my business, I'm working for my business, to my business is now working for me?
Well, I think super common, right, that I started this business, I'm working all the time, and now I've created my own prison, right? It's like it consumes me. And I think this idea about shifting, about trying to create more of a self-managing company, right, is something. It's not something that happens overnight. It's not something you snap a finger or one, but just this idea about what would a self-managing company look like, and what are the steps that I could take, let's say, over the next 3 years, to make my business more self-managing, have it be less dependent upon me making all the decisions and pulling all the levers and trying to create more of a self-managing business.
Decentralizing.
Well, it makes and getting right people, right seats, clarity about purpose, where you're going. Lots of things come into place with that, for sure.
Yeah. Well, let's switch over to the Q&A. Is Daniel here? All right. Guys, so you guys enjoying the chat? That was an hour conversation. Isn't that fast?
Yeah.
You're like, no, this is forever. I can't wait to be out of here.
Yeah, geez, I'm like,
yes, man.
time to go.
I can no longer remember CRES after
No. It's just stop. Stop that negative self-talk.
I'm sorry. Yeah. All right. So we got the mic. So basically, this 30 minutes of just any question you want to throw, maybe about parenting, maybe about business, about anything in life, really, but hopefully subject matter is parenting is hard. Open forum. Just raise your hand, and we'll bring a mic to you, and we can. Alex, you do the best to answer.
I'll try.
Well, thank you. I enjoyed the chat. Closer to my mouth.
There we go.
Okay. I really did enjoy the chat and all the wisdom that has been shared today. I wanted to ask you, what led you to foster parenting, you and your wife, or your wife and you?
Yeah, that's a great question, right? So I'm 59 years old. I'm changing diapers, right? And it's like I've been parenting since the 80s, 90s. It's like, what would lead me to do that? So I'm friends with this guy. His name is Godly Daniel. That's like his real name. It's not fake. And he is the executive director of this organization called A Door of Hope. And so I was kind of oblivious, my wife and I were kind of oblivious to kind of what was going on in the foster care system. And we've got a crisis in Florida. Just in the Tampa Bay area, there's like 100 children a night that have nowhere to go, right? They're sleeping in vans and they're in offices. They get removed because it's not safe for them to be in their homes. And so there's 100 kids a night that don't have any permanent place to go. So my wife, she says, our kids, we have a 12-year-old, so my wife says she needs me less now. And maybe there's something that I could work, maybe I could do something else. And she said, but the one thing I know how to do is I know how to be a mom. I'm pretty good at that. I said, yes, of course, yes, you are. And she said, how about we investigate getting licensed to be foster parents? I think that, I think this is something that we should do. And I said, well, I'm not so sure, right? And she said, well, how about we just take a step? I said, oh, my wife's pretty smart. Okay, sure, let's just take a step. So we went to an info session, and then we went to another session, went to another. The next thing you know, we're in the licensing process.
Taking 12 steps.
Yeah. And then, we got licensed, and then within 24 hours, we had kids. I mean, they said, your license, your number, as soon as we get the number from the state of Florida, actually, it should happen today, maybe tomorrow, but we want to start presenting some children to you. And then when they tell you the stories about these kids, you're like, well, why would we say no, right? So bring them. So I remember we got licensed, and they called us, and they said, okay, we'll take them. And they said, okay, well, we'll be over right now. And we're like, no, hold on. It was a 1-year-old and a 2-year-old. How about give us till tomorrow? And they said, okay, we'll be there at 8 in the morning. So within 12 hours of us getting our number, we had foster children living with us. So, but it really came from this awareness that what a struggle and a crisis we have in our community about it. And we're like, well, we can help one family. We can help. It started out to be one child that was, and then they came as a package, right? So we said, okay, we can take 2.
Yeah, great question.
But A Door of Hope.
A Door of Hope. It's a great organization.
Go to their website, and but be
Godly's
careful. If you do that, if you get too involved with them,
they will work.
Pretty soon, you'll be having a child
Godly's a
living in
great
your
guy.
house.
He really is. He's amazing. He's an awesome heart for these
they
kids.
Do. Yeah, they do. Great.
So
great
all right,
work.
next question. Felix. Yep. Then we'll go to Victor too.
Hey, hello. Thank you. I have a question. How do you know when you're being successful as a parent? How do you know when you're doing a good job?
It's a great question. That's kind of leads into that KPI thing too.
Yeah. You get your spreadsheet out, and you see how many boxes are checked. I think, for me anyway, is that if I take time to think about it, right, just kind of reflect, my wife and I have a general sense of how we're doing, right? If we're connected with our kids and we have conversations with them like we know. So like my 16-year-old, he's an athlete, so it's all about athletics. Girls, he's like, I'm not interested in them. There's a bunch of drama with girls, and I got to go to school, get good grades, and play football. That's his thing. So all of a sudden, he's like, some girl comes to our house, and they sit in the driveway in her car, and they talk for 2 hours. And I'm like, oh, this is,
great.
The heck is going on here, right? So I had a conversation with him. What's up? And he talked to me. And so I'm like, okay, cool, right? So part of it, I think, is the sense that there's certain signs, right? If they're not, I think if you're not communicating with them, if your relationship, because I believe it's all about the relationship, especially as they get older. I think, how old are your kids? 2 and 3. Okay, so 2 and 3. I got a 2 and 3-year-old in my house right now. If they don't do what I say, I got a problem. Kind of. It's like. One of the foster boys, he was sitting in my office with me in timeout. He found a a pen is stuck in the chair. It's like this leather chair. It's like an heirloom chair. It's like been in my family, and I'm like, I see him with the pen in his hand, and I think, oh, he's colored all over the chair. The chair is going to be ruined. But he just colored all over himself, right? So I'm like, oh, okay, we're okay. But I think it's about every season, right? There's different things, right? A 2 and a 3-year-old, that's a lot of energy. That's a lot of inputs.
Yeah.
It's a lot of reading stories and spending time with them and communicating with them and correcting them, certainly, and praising them when they do well. And
praising them is a big thing.
Yeah. So it's, I mean, I think it's,
Yeah.
and I think you never really know, right? You know, part of it is you do all the footwork, right? You do all what you think is all the right footwork. And it doesn't, the honest truth is it doesn't always end out and turn out like you want, you know?
Yeah, you have no control over it. It's complex. They're going to make their own decisions. But I would say for us when they're little, because we have a 4-year-old and a 2-year-old as well, but then the 6-year-old and the 10-year-old, well, there's 2 things that we look at with them. One is we try to direct and redirect, and when they do something good, we celebrate them. So we have a treasure box, and when they listen, we call it first-time obedience. When they listen the first time, and when they, and I'll run like little tests, right? They don't know it's a test, and so like my Jeremiah, who's my smart little guy, dude. He's 6, crazy smart kid. He's one of the hardest kids to parent, to be honest. How brilliant he is. He saw doing my daddy-daughter trip with him. Our first one, he solved a word search puzzle without knowing his ABCs. That's how smart Jeremiah is. So you can't make this kid do anything he doesn't want to do, period. And that's a lot of kids, but this, I can kind of twist it with the other ones. This one, I can't make him do anything he doesn't want to do. And this was like 3 weeks ago, or maybe 2 weeks ago. I said, hey, Jeremiah, I need you to clean. Can you just clean the entire table for me, please? We just finished eating. I need you to clean all the table, put it in. And every time before this, it was always, no, I don't want to, I didn't make that mess. So-and-so should do it. Or what's in it for me? What are you going to, he's like negotiating with me. I was like, no, And so this time, he completely did it. Said, all right, Daddy. And then, I just blew up like he just won the Super Bowl. Oh, my God, Jeremiah, look what you did. And I brought all the siblings in. I said, guys, look at what Jeremiah has just done. Jeremiah, you get treasure box. This is awesome. He's cleaning up for the first time. And he's like, he's like getting, oh, man, celebrating. You know what happens? The 4-year-old and the 2-year-old go, oh, dang, dude. And they try to start to get on this action, trying to get, they're cleaning up the table. And they never do that, right? But now it's like, so that was a win. I fail at that stuff all the time too. But celebrating when they're actually applying what because they catch it. You don't think they're catching it, but they do catch it. And the second thing that I've learned, at least, and the jury's out because they're not over 13 yet, but what I've caught is I will watch them how they interact with other kids at playgrounds and at the park, at school, and I will watch if they're, because you're really trying to measure their emotional intelligence. Right, you're the developmental EQ of how they're interacting with other human beings, and I will see when I know there's a child that doesn't have the same structure or culture or core values that we have, and they're being very selfish or I don't want them to be a pushover, so I teach them to stand up for themselves or stand up for the least of these and for their siblings, but to also be kind. And so a lot of times I'll see how they interact when they don't know I'm watching. And that's been at least a gauge as a dad of intentionality. Of like, man, wow, that was awesome. And sometimes when I think, wow, that's awesome, other parents are mortified because my kid just clocked another kid. I was like, no, but that was awesome because he was defending this kid. And so you just kind of, and then we had to talk about putting the hands are for helping and not hurting. And then here's an ice cream because that kid was 4 years older than you and was picking on everybody. You just kind of... and that's not everyone agrees with that, but it's like, I don't know if that makes sense to how when there really is no, there's no handbook to this, right? You just have a baby and they give them to you 2 days after the hospital and you're done. You're like, what do I do? And so, but those are 2 things that I've at least seen, celebrating when they actually, and it's like 9 times out of 10, they're not doing what I say they're supposed to do. And it's like, but when they do, man, you make that thing just the biggest thing in the world. because they have that feeling of affirmation, and then they start connecting the dots. Wow, that was actually really good. And maybe dad is not just like being mean to me all the time, telling me to pick stuff up. Maybe there's something to this, and I don't know. That's my thought on that question.
That's good.
Yeah,
That's good.
Yeah, I don't know anything though, so that's what
That's good.
we're still testing that.
Where it sounds
theory
like it's working for you.
It's working right now. I don't know. It works until it doesn't work, right? Like anything in business, every 20% growth, I got to change the whole system. So, all right, other questions? We got another 20 minutes
20 minutes.
of questions, or we can end early. But yeah, Victor.
Well, I didn't really have a question, but wanted to
Or
share my
statements, yeah.
biggest takeaway from this, which is what you said, that parenting is about staying in a relationship and continuing to have influence over them.
Yeah.
I think that's my biggest takeaway from this. And what I did want to kind of piggyback on what you said, that I have a 17-year-old daughter and a 19-year-old son. And yes, I feel old.
Well, you don't look old. You look good.
Chiropractic adds life to years, brother. But one way that I think we could measure our success as parenting is when they were handed to us 2 days later, we kept them.
Yeah.
We didn't throw them away.
Yeah.
We didn't leave them to add to the burden of foster care. Doesn't mean that these people are bad or whatever turned out in their lives that led to those decisions. But looking back at my years growing up, and the original statement I wanted to make is what Jeremy said, that no one in the history of the planet has had to parent the way we have to now. Is that really true, though, if we think about our parents? Cultural differences, generational differences. We just have different challenges, but every generation has had to go through that.
There's nothing new under the sun. There's always technological advances.
And
Right.
humans have always feared technology. With the advent of electricity, elevators,
It's true.
and vehicles, it was the end. The sky is falling. But yet we're all here. I'm sure, I'm not speaking for everyone, but I'm speaking for myself. I had some pretty rough years as a teenager, yet somehow, whether it was divine intervention or through what our parents embedded in us when we were babies, somehow we flipped that switch and we turned it around. So there's hope for all of us. And
There is.
I just want to say thank you, guys. Thank you, Dr. Carlos, for inviting me here and for what you guys are doing. This is great.
It's awesome.
So your statement gave me hope that I'm doing things right with these kids.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. Shared experiences, thoughts, questions. Tyler.
First, Alex, thanks for your backstory. I can relate to that pretty closely. So
Oh, really? Cool.
I appreciate that. Y'all mentioned the relationship's the most important aspect. Your now wife, Melissa, did she ever find it challenging to build relationships with your original 3 children?
Do you want to give any backstory to this, Tyler?
Which part?
Your backstory, like, because
Yeah,
I know why you're asking this, but maybe like.
Yeah,
What?
so I'm 33. I got married to my wife Alexia in September. She has a 14-year-old son. So he's in that transition period of the control versus the influence.
So you're less than a year old in your marriage.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And
First
so
year.
he's going through that transition while being a newlywed partner.
Yeah.
So there's challenges in building that relationship because it's already beginning to set in stone, his early childhood years.
Yeah, yeah. So well, I think it was challenging for my wife, Melissa. So she inherited a 7-year-old, a 9-year-old, and an 11-year-old, right? And the background of the kids wasn't the best, right? Their father was a homeless drug addict and an alcoholic, absent, living in Atlanta, and the mom had her challenges, right? So I think it was difficult. I think that the one thing that we did from the very beginning is we made sure that we were in unity, right? We just really worked hard that we were a unit, right? That we were on the same page, right? And I think that made it easier we were powerless over my ex-wife and what she did and what she said, but we made sure that we were on the same page. And so I think that, and now my 33-year-old daughter says, I thank God every day when I wake up that he sent Melissa into my life, right? So she's 33. Melissa appeared when she was 11, right? And so I think that the impact that you get to have on this 14-year-old young man is really special and incredible, right? I've just met you today. I think you're a sharp guy. You got a lot going on. I think you have a lot to offer a 14-year-old young man. And the nature of your relationship will be different than the relationship that he has with his father. But you're a stepfather, right? And you have the opportunity to shape and have a relationship with him and change him in ways. This young man's life will be better because of you. So,
Thank you. Appreciate that.
Any other questions? Any thoughts? Yeah, like this is a part of the conversation. So if you want to add to it, if you want to disagree with anything, if you want to anything.
I keep having problems with this mic, but I just wanted to say the relationship part that you kept speaking about and you were able to share. I think about my husband because over the years, he would do things, on Fridays, and Fridays are like fish day. And it was years later that I learned that he was really trying to create relationships and things that the children would remember. But they, of course, like, okay, Friday's it's fish dining. So they would kind of talk about it and make it a joke. But it's something that I'm going to take away to let my husband know and to affirm him that, even though we look at it as dad was always so routine, but he was really creating these memories. And he had mentioned it one time, but today you reminded me of that. I'm a big person on relationship, but today was just right on it. And then my other question, I do have a question. Yeah. In all the different areas of parenting, the different ages, the 3 that were older, and then you get 4 more, and now you have the 2. What is the best, what was different in all those 3 different areas of parenting? What can you give us that, like, okay, in all this is what I've learned about children?
So I think
best of it, and the worst too now.
Yeah. I think the thing that the mistake that I think I made when I was a younger parent was I wanted to die on every hill, right? And now that I'm older, I'm like, well, how long you wear your hair doesn't really matter, right? There's other things that are important, right? When I was younger, I was afraid they were going to be ruined and they were going to be, end up being bank robbers and terrible people. And so, you can't have your hair long and you can't do this and you can't do that. And that, I think that it's just, choose your battles, choose the things that are important. I think for me, that's been the biggest thing. As an older parent, right, with a 2 and a 3-year-old who, what's really that they make a mess on the floor with their toys. Well, it doesn't really matter, But when one of them gets in trouble at school for punching another 3-year-old, and he says, well, he was 4, so I could do that. Well, we have to talk about that, right? I don't know if I'm going to take him and buy him ice cream, but
That was a joke, but
so I think for me that's the biggest thing for me.
let me give the backstory on that.
What?
The ice cream thing.
No, it's okay.
No, I'm going to give a backstory.
You don't have to defend yourself.
I'm not defending myself. I'm
You are. It sounds
clarifying.
like you are.
No.
I'm clarifying.
I'm clarifying. No, they were at a
Teaching your
trampoline
children
park.
to be aggressive.
Well, so I don't know. You guys tell me if this is right or wrong, because I'm actually jury's out on this one. So
We'll have a vote.
yeah. So it was my 6-year-old. He's at the trampoline park, right? And there's this group of 4, 10 to 12-year-old kids. And they fall, and him and my daughter are trying to avoid this group because they're picking on him and making fun of him and pointing and laughing. I wasn't there. My wife was watching this happen. And so they're there, and he's 6, and they're just trying to, and these kids are just pestering them and following them around the entire trampoline park, right? And so they boom, successful. You try to avoid the conflict. That's what I'm teaching you. It's good. I'm glad you did that. So then this group of kids kind of corner my son, right? And they were making fun of him. And my son ended just like took the biggest, and I didn't teach him this, biggest one in the group and hit him right in the solar plex and knocked him down. And the rest of the kids said, case closed, I guess he's not. And they all walked away. And he settled it, right? And so that's why I was kind of like.
So it was on the news, all the rumbles at the trampoline parks.
All right, I know.
It's on the news every so often where they have like this big fight, all the kids
No, they
fight.
don't. Do
No,
they
it's
really?
legit. Yeah.
Oh, wow.
Totally true.
I didn't know about that.
So it's your son on the news.
Apparently. No,
And
so
you're taking him to ice cream.
that
for
was the context.
Way to go,
I was
son.
like, I don't know, man. Like, you just dropped the big one who was like being a bully on you. Like, you tried to avoid the conflict, and the conflict you couldn't avoid it, and so you settled it, and then they said case closed. I guess it's settled. What do you do in that scenario? That was a real life scenario that happened like 3 months ago.
Yeah.
I didn't really buy him ice cream, but I was like kind of torn. I was like, I don't know. This is context. This is actually like, is it ever okay to defend yourself in that scenario?
Well, what is the group we were going to vote on?
Yeah, we're gonna vote. We're gonna vote. What do you guys think? How do you handle that? It's very complex. No, I mean no.
Yeah, right.
No, but I mean, it was. I think one of the other parents was trying to figure out why their kid just got hit, and my wife said, "Well, they were picking on him for 20 minutes." He was the younger one. Yeah, they were the older ones. Yeah, a group of older kids. So I mean, what do you do? What do you say? How do you handle that? Right, there's that party that goes, that's a little carnal, and you're like, yeah, well, that's. But how do you, in a civilized society, how do you correct that? When is it a good time to? What's the lesson to learn? Like, this is a 6-year-old. He went on instinct, right?
Yeah.
I don't know though. Do I correct him? Does he get in trouble? Does he? It's a real life question.
I personally don't think it needs correction. He stood his ground. He
Yeah.
avoided the conflict with
Yeah. Yeah.
Now, you don't celebrate that violence is the right way, but
Yeah. I really didn't take him to get ice cream, but that's how I kind of felt that, right? I was like, oh, yeah. Right. These are real life scenarios that our kids are gonna. He dealt with that at 6, so it's like, what do I want to correct in his life? If he's 20, right, and does he remember? Oh man, Dad, go ahead, Carlos. Oh, we should probably bring the microphone.
I'll share something really interesting. And just for context, I'm a psychologist, so I deal with this all the time, human programming. And so I have an 11-month-old, and my sister, who's my younger sister, her daughter is about a month older than my son. And so recently we went down to Miami, and it was one of the first opportunities that they got to sort of play together. And the interesting thing to watch was my son's he's just got an easy temperament. He's very laid back. He likes to watch and observe. He's very cool, just laid back. My niece's temperament is a little bit tougher. She gets fussy really quickly. And again, we come into the world with different temperaments. And so we're watching them play together, and my son's playing with a ball, and she comes over and just snatches it from him, right? And because she's being fussy, because she's being temperamental. And my son is sort of just there watching, right? But now she starts to get a little bit more aggressive. Now, mind you, these kids are not even a year old yet. What I found interesting is the way that some of these things get reinforced, right? Because she's behaving that way, all of the adults are, oh, look at her, right? Like almost like reinforcing that that's an okay thing to do. And I'm sitting back here like, if I don't teach my son boundaries around his kindness, he will spend the rest of his life getting trampled by people that don't know better.
That's a good way to put it.
Right? So my lessons will always come to him from a place of compassion, love, acceptance, and there's certain people that don't show up in the world with that playbook. And for those sorts of people, we're going to have a different set of limits and boundaries, but that we always reside in a place of compassion.
Yeah, and that's, what we do too is we expose our kids to, like some of their best friends they come from a lower socioeconomic life. They're young African American boys, but they've been like literally they've been in our life since they were 3 months old or a year old to 4 years old. Right, that's it's 2 boys, and so we teach our kids to even stand up for them, right? And those type of things. And so we teach our kids about inequality and about you have to have courage, right? When it's hard, when it's easy, everyone can do it. When you have to stand up and actually lose popularity or take a hit to stand for justice and what's right for another human being, because they were out playing with these kids, and these kids were kind of getting made fun of, right? It was racism at a young age, and so my daughter went and stood her ground on his behalf, and so you think of those things like how, but you're right, it has to be a principle thing, like there's a delicate dance to it, like don't be the aggressor, but don't just stand and get hit, right? Those type of things, but that is. And it's hard in today's world because it's so. I feel like everyone that has a phone and that can somehow talk with confidence has an influence on parenting. And I was like, I always pick on my wife a little bit to be funny. She's like, well, we should try this. I said, she's 32. We don't know if it works. Find somebody who's 62. Tell her, right? Like we don't know if this thing's going to actually work. What they're talking about. This is a social experiment, and. But yeah, it's.
When I think with parenting, there's a lot of anxiety, right? And there's a lot of helicopter parents, and there's a lot of things where, when I was growing up, my mom's like, okay, when we ring the dinner bell, I'm like 6. When we ring the dinner bell, I'll come back home.
Yeah.
And Robbie Gibson was my neighbor, and he punched me, and I punched him back, and I knocked him out, and no parents ever knew about it.
Yeah.
Right, and it was done, right? So I think part of it is that with there's so much anxiety, so much fear that I'm going to make the wrong decision, or I'm going to break my child, or I'm going to. One of the things that I've seen about these foster kids that we have, these kids have been through a lot. They've been through a lot, and they are emotionally resilient, and they can change, and they can. I mean, it's amazing to me. So I think that, and that the stories are written over a long period of time, somebody's life. And you can always make a new beginning. You can always change. You can always improve. You can always get better. At 35 years old, I was a failure in every aspect of my life, every aspect of my life, and that I could from that place change, right? And I think we're just so afraid that we're gonna make a mistake. We're not gonna do it. We got to be perfect parents. And it's just. Creates a lot of stress, a lot of anxiety that we just don't enjoy the process of being a parent and loving our kids.
Yeah.
Maybe it's the old man in me.
No, it's true. It's true. It's a thing that plagues parents.
And you didn't tell me we were going to have a psychologist in the room, so he's probably being like, "Oh my gosh,
was
everything they're saying is totally wrong." I don't know where you got this guy, but he shouldn't come back.
Well, we always have an SME in the room.
Yeah. What's an SME?
Subject matter expert.
Oh, okay. The acronyms.
Call them SMEs.
SMEs. Well, he should be up here.
Yeah. Okay. All right. I'll just translate. Go. It's good that Dr. Carla. I'm just kidding. Yeah, his little brother's not gonna wait, but it's personality, right? My 4-year-old is a complete fighter. Like a kid messes with. I mean, that's we're already dealing with that in school. He started getting in trouble at school because he was just aggressive. He was like, "Oh no, wow!" And you're like, "No, no, 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 no!" Like he's like, it's his first response now. Kids are different.
Yeah.
Same parenting, and that's the scariest part. Yeah. So some kids, like I don't know, like it's programming, but then how they come with their own programming too, right? Like how do you redirect that? and that, it's like, man, you are going to do some things. You taught yourself how to roller skate at 9 months old. It's my 4-year-old. Right? You're like 2 weeks ago, he's like, Dad, I want to ride my bike without training wheels. All right, I'll get to it.
Well,
Took his own training wheels off. Did you know that? Did I tell you that story?
No.
He took his own. This is the day before Father's Day. Took his own training wheels off, and says, "All right, Dad, I'm ready." What? How'd you get your training wheels off? And meanwhile, his brother is 6, has calculated everything, and so I stand the little one up. I'm like, all right, here we go, and I just move the bike a little bit, and he's gone. And I go, oh no, he doesn't know how to stop or nothing, but he's riding his bike. And then it spurred his older brother, who's overanalyzing a paralysis through analysis, and he goes, Dad, I need to ride my bike without training wheels. I go, what? Like, that just happened. There's no rule book. It's personality traits, but programming, in a way, like, I don't know. They just kind of inspired that thought to me. Like, how do you program in their already natural program state, right? Because they're different. They're going to do different things in the world.
Well, I think who your children become is more caught than taught, right? So they
yeah.
watch you,
It's caught.
and if you're like cursing at people in traffic, and they're sitting in the back seat.
Alex, you don't have to take it personal.
No, I'm not saying I'm not right. I'm not sat in the back
I'm
seat
just kidding.
with you. But part of it is, what do they see? What do they observe? What happens in the home? What happens with their siblings? So I think,
Yeah.
a lot of it is caught, right? How they
is.
end up, as adults or teenagers.
What do you think though? Like, kind of back on to like the whole programming. What do you guys think about that? They catch it. Yeah. Awesome, guys. Any closing thoughts or questions? We actually went over.
What?
3 minutes over. Yeah. Anything? What do you guys think? It was cool? Awesome. Well, thank you to all our awesome members and our guests. We're going to do this again next month. We're going to send out a survey, though. We're trying to find out the next 6 months. We do this in 3-part segments through quarterly. So we're really kind of dancing around what are some hot topics right now that we're going through as entrepreneurs and leaders. We might revisit. We did a financial literacy one for our first one. Maybe we might do that again because the economic climates that we're anticipating a major shift or slowdown or even major recession in Q4, like October, November. So we might do something on that, like how to prepare, economically. We might do one on real estate, how to accumulate wealth through real estate, so we still don't know yet. So if you guys, we're going to send out a survey to our members, and would love to connect. Honestly with you guys that aren't members to engage to see how we can serve you guys in our community as well. But we're going to send out that survey, so please respond to us. Let us know what topics that you think are hot. I got your text. I have to read it, but watch the. But yeah, did you guys like this? Was this good? And thank you so much for coming to our CRES Chat. And thank you, Alex, for coming.
It's a pleasure to be here. Thank you.
And how can people get in touch with you if they want some coaching or you have an email or website? Find you on the app.
Yeah, you can find me on the app.
You're kind of in a transition,
I've done
so I don't know how
right?
to.
So you can Google me.
Alex is around here. He's one of
Google me.
our dedicated suites here, so he's all the time, and so Alex is a good guy. Love you, man.
Yeah, thanks,
You're
man.
the man.
All right.
All right, guys. Thanks so much. We'll hang out a little bit longer, but that's it.